Hello guys, welcome back to Unit 3 Profit Quest. My name is Adarsh Kannappan, and today we're going to be expanding on debt accumulation. So last time we talked about what a loan really is and what you may need to take out a loan, and the effects of taking out a personal loan. Today we'll be talking about debt accumulation. So loans essentially build debt, and debt is what you have to pay back to after you gain the money from a loan. So there's two real parts of debt. One is capital debt. So this is the original amount that you applied for to take out. And the other is interest. So the building of debt over time. And this keeps adding on to your existing debt. So let's say I take out a loan of $1,000. If the bank I apply for uses compound interest, which is what most banks usually use, and they have an interest rate of 4% per week. If I take out a loan of $1,000, the next week my debt will add 4% of 1,000, which was my capital, onto my capital. So 1,000 plus 4% of 1,000 is 1,040, because 4% of 1,000 is 40. And then it would, on the 2 weeks after I take out the capital debt, it would add 4% of 1,040 onto it. So 4% of 1,040 is 41.6. And then 1,040 plus 41.6 is 1,081.6. But interest doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Actually, if you have your money sitting in a bank account, interest could accumulate onto that money, providing a gain in money for you. So this can be known as positive interest, while the build of interest on debts can be marginalized in your mind as a negative interest. So you want to usually pay back your negative interest before it starts building up to a crazy amount, and you want to keep your money sitting in an account for a long time so it also builds up to a crazy amount. So there's two real types of interest, but only one of these types of interest is actually used. There's simple interest, which just builds upon the amount of capital, and that means if I were to take out a loan of $1,000 with a weekly interest rate of 4%, that would mean that the next week my loan adds 4% of 1,000, which is 1,040, and then my loan would again add 4% of 1,000. So it would keep adding 4% of the capital interest. However, compound interest first builds interest upon the capital and then builds more interest upon the increased amount that you add onto the capital. So remember last time I said after week 1 we would add 4% of 1,000 to make 1,040. And then after week 2 we'd add 4% of 1,040 to make 1,081.6. Well, which one is more? Compound interest builds to a value of 1,081.6, but simple interest builds to a value of 1,080. This is why compound interest is dangerous, as it keeps increasing on the increased amount of money. And this can cause people to miscalculate the amount of interest they may actually have to pay, resulting in them finding themselves lost in a sea of debt. So remember, banks will most likely apply compound interest upon loans because this is the only real type of interest used. But it's a good thing because it's also used in the money sitting in your bank account. So it can go both ways. Finally, I'm going to talk about credit cards and the debt that they accumulate. So you might know a credit card as the card that your parents use, or maybe you might use one, to pay for a lot of their items. So credit cards actually build debt. And that might not make sense at first, because you might be thinking, wait a minute, we pay for stuff with our own money by using a credit card. So how does it build debt? Actually, when you pay for an item, it builds credit card debt. So credit card debt is the money used by the card. And this money used by the card accumulates as debt in the bank. And usually, credit card debt has to be paid back before the end of a term, which might be like 1 month or 2 months. So let's say I buy a $100 thing, a $100 item from a store, and a $40 item from another store. I would in total have $140, not factoring in tax, in my credit card debt. That means that it doesn't directly take money from my bank account, but at the end of the term, which let's say is 1 month, money would be taken from my bank account to pay back the credit card debt. But let's say I don't pay back the credit card debt. I'm feeling a little rebellious this term. This would drastically decrease my credit score. And this would mean that banks all over the United States would have less of a motive to trust me and give me loans, which could ultimately harm my entire future. So you always want to pay back your credit card debt. Thank you guys for listening to part 2 of Unit 3. Next time, we'll expand a little bit more on the credit score and the places where you can take a loan out.